Shalom. I'm Nama Rue. This is my husband, Rabbi David Rue, and we are talking about the laws that apply to agriculture in the Holy Land for Jewish people. Do you want to tell us where we are?
We've done the first few tractates. We are going to skip the next one, which is Shvit, which deals with the sabbatical year, which is coming up this coming year.
Why are we skipping?
So that when we finish everything else, we can look at it more in depth so that people who have never had a chance to understand this mitzvah can understand it.
It's really important for me because I'm gardening and I cannot garden almost at all the way I normally do because next year it's going to have to kind of grow on its own and I'm going to have to make it available to the public, and I still really don't know what that entails. I know I can't really do much weeding, I can't do transplanting, I can't plant. And this year I actually have a lot of plants hopefully will go to seed and come up voluntarily next year, but we're not going to go deeper into that. Can you tell us what we're going to focus on today?
The next three tractates are Trumot, Maasarot, and Maasarot. Truma literally means that which is raised up. It is property that is God's property, but the Kohanim get to eat it. Maasarot are different types of tithes that are given generally to the Levim, to the helpers of the Kohanim, of the priests in the temple. And Maaser Sheni is second tithe, which is sometimes second tithe and sometimes poor person's tithe, as we'll discuss. So I want to give a little bit of introduction to this. So when a crop is harvested, or parts of a crop, there are two different types of harvests if you think about it. There are certain things like a wheat harvest that you go through and you harvest all the entire field at one time. There are many fruits also that are harvested this way, other types of fruits and many vegetables, you harvest what's ripe now, and in a few days there's more things that are ripe and you harvest them at that time. But in any case, as you gather the things together, you have to separate these various gifts for the priests, the Levites, and poor people, or some of it is actually for us to use when we go up to pilgrimage festivals in Jerusalem. So when I've got my grain, let's say, as an example, the first thing I separated from it is 1/50th of the crop for the average person. And this 1/50th is given to the Kohanim, to the priests, and it's called Truma Gedola, the Great Truma. After that, I separate from what's left 1/10, and this is called first tithe, and it's given to the Levite. The Levite takes from his tithe 1/10 of what he's got and gives that also to the Kohen, and that's called Truma min ha'maaser, that which is raised up from the tithe. Then, what happens next depends upon where we are in the sabbatical year cycle. In years 1, 2, then skipping a year 4, 5, it's called second tithe, which the owners get to take up and use that food when they go to pilgrimage festivals in Jerusalem, or if it's too far to go, or there would be, say this is wine, it would be way more wine than I could ever use myself, I can redeem it and take that redemption money and buy all the foods that I need when I'm in Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festivals. In the third and sixth year, it's a different separation. I still separate the second tenth, which is about 9% of the total crop. And this amount is given to the poor, and it's called poor person's tithe. It's very interesting that Maimonides says that we have to be more careful with the mitzvah, with the commandment of tzedakah, of charity, than all the other mitzvahs of the Torah. And he says that charity is the sign of the righteous seed of Avraham, our father, Avraham Avinu, as it says, Ki yadativ leman asher yitzaveh es benav lasos tzedakah. I know that you will command your sons to do this mitzvah of tzedakah. And the true faith of Israel stands only on tzedakah, as it says in Isaiah, but tzedakah tikonani, I have been established through tzedakah, and Israel will not be redeemed except through the mitzvah of tzedakah, as it says again in Yeshayahu, Tzion b'mishpat tipade v'shaveha b'tzedakah, Zion will be redeemed in justice, and its captives through charity. So this part of the mitzvah of separating of the tithes is very, very important. There is also an additional aspect of this, in that the lands that are close to the land of Israel also have to separate tithes. This is a rabbinic enactment. And in the sabbatical year, they separate for their second tithes, poor person's tithes, so that the poor people will have things to rely on when there aren't normal crops grown in Israel. Because during the sabbatical year, no tithes are separated. You only separate tithes from owned property. If there's a field growing wild at any time of the year, and I go and I gather some fruit there or vegetables or whatever it is, there's no obligation for tithe because it doesn't belong to anyone. Because it says you will separate this from your crop, meaning it has to belong to you, or at least belong to someone to be liable in the tithes. If not, there's no liability in the tithe. So at a time when there will not be tithes, there will not be normal agricultural processes going on, pay it leket shechacha, the various gifts that we described earlier on, for the poor, so they will have, from just outside of Eretz Yisrael, they will have these things to rely on.
I have a few really short questions. First of all, when was this written?
The Maimonides lived in the 1000s to 1100s.
And what is he sourcing? When was that written?
Well, he quoted verses from the prophets Isaiah, so during First Temple times, say approximately 700 years before the Common Era.
And have these laws been in practice since 700 years before the Common Era?
Yes, there's more to discuss about that later when we discuss other charitable tithes.
Okay, so currently when I'm growing food in my garden, I have to separate 1/100th of my produce, and there's a process I do to designate it for the priests. So we're not going to go into the details of how I do that, but it applies today, right? So
it applies in a symbolic way today, and that we'll discuss at a later time.
It's keeping us in the practice of doing it
so that we will be ready to do it when we actually have to.
Okay, but I still have to do it now, otherwise you can divorce me and I owe you nothing, right?
Well, I owe you nothing.
Okay, that's right. Okay, so, and when we shop at the store in Israel, I don't have to do the separation. Why?
If you shop at a store that is supervised, that has rabbinic supervision, the rabbinic supervision takes care of separating the tithes in advance, so that everything that's in the store has already had the tithe separated from it.
Okay, so as far as separating for the poor, do I do that also?
We will discuss this more at a later date.
Okay, so for now I'm separating for the priests.
Correct.
Okay, we're gonna have to catch up on a lot more.
As time goes on.
Thank you.